Usually when we look at the evolution of software, there's a really clear, comfortable boundary between the tool and the user. Like you hold the paintbrush and the software is just the canvas.
Right,
You
exactly.
hold the mouse, the software executes the click. But, well, if you look at what has unfolded just this week, specifically between April 26th and May 2nd, 2026, we're watching that boundary just completely dissolve.
We really are. I mean, we are definitely stepping out of the chatbot era now. For the last few years, the prevailing model was basically a standalone foundation model that you talk to in a browser window.
Yeah, a separate tab.
Exactly. But what we're seeing now is a massive pivot toward autonomous agentic workflows. And these are embedded directly into our daily software tools, our corporate networks, and actually the physical infrastructure of cybersecurity.
And that is exactly what we are going to explore with you on the deep dive today. We've got a stack of updates from Anthropic over this past week, and they paint a really vivid picture of this shift. We're going to look at how their AI is moving from being this conversational assistant to a literal technical director for creatives, basically holding the digital mouse. We'll also dig into a massive study on human trust and, unpack why the U.S. Pentagon is keeping Anthropic at arm's length despite all these technical leaps.
Yeah, and to really understand where this technology is going, I think the best place to start is actually with human psychology.
Okay, how so?
Well, before an AI can autonomously orchestrate our tools, the engineers have to understand how we fundamentally interact with it, right?
Yeah.
How the AI reasons through messy, real-world inputs from actual humans.
Which brings up some incredible research published by Anthropic on April 30th. They analyzed this random, anonymized sample of 1 million Claude conversations to see how people are asking the AI for personal guidance. And honestly, the numbers caught me totally off guard.
Yeah, they are quite revealing about user behavior. Out of that million conversation sample, roughly 6% involved users actively seeking profound personal guidance.
6% of a million, that's huge.
Yeah. It is. We aren't talking about asking for a coding snippet or a pancake recipe. 27% of those specific queries were about serious health decisions.
Wow.
26% were about careers, and 12% were about romantic relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's like asking a GPS, not just for the fastest route, but asking it whether you should even take the trip in the first place.
That's a great way to put it.
You have people typing into a predictive text engine. Should I break up with my partner? Or is it time to quit my job? That is just a staggering level of emotional trust to place in a machine.
It really is, and it highlights a major vulnerability in AI alignment that's known as sycophancy.
Sycophancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you understand how a large language model works under the hood, it's essentially a highly complex autocomplete engine.
Just guessing the next word.
Exactly. It is mathematically incentivized to predict the next most likely word based on the prompt it gets. So if a user comes in angry and types, my boss is being completely unreasonable, shouldn't I just walk out? The most statistically likely response in its training data is to just agree with the premise of the prompt.
Because that's what a human would typically say to a friend venting. It just tells you what you want to hear. It acts as a mirror for your own bias.
Precisely. And in a high-stakes emotional context, that feedback loop is incredibly dangerous. Anthropic's research identified that sycophancy is an acute risk specifically when users ask for spiritual or relationship advice.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. So mitigating this isn't just a matter of, making the AI smarter. It requires actively training the model to recognize a loaded, emotionally charged prompt and consciously break its mathematical habit of agreeing.
It has to actively push back.
Yes. It has to be aligned to offer objective, balanced perspectives, pushing back gently, rather than just feeding the user's current emotional state.
That completely reframes how I think about AI safety, honestly. It's not always about, stopping a model from generating malicious code. Sometimes it's just about preventing an echo chamber of terrible life advice.
Yeah.
And figuring out how these models reason through complex scenarios leads us right into the sciences. Because just a day prior, on April 29th, Anthropic's discovery team published a new evaluation framework. It's called BioMysteryBench.
This is a really major leap in how we benchmark frontier models. Historically, the industry has tested AI capabilities using standardized multiple-choice questions.
Like the bar exam or whatever.
Exactly. But that format is incredibly sterile. It doesn't reflect actual scientific work at all. BioMysteryBench introduces a 99-question evaluation based on real, highly complex biological data sets.
Things like proteomics and genetic sequencing, right?
Right. Messy molecular structures. But the way they test it is what really stands out. They don't just ask the model a question and wait for a text response.
Okay, so what do they do?
They actually give the model access to canonical bioinformatics tools and databases and basically say, here is the data, here are the tools, go figure it out.
So they just turn it loose in the lab environment.
Yes. The benchmark only grades the final answer. It lets the model choose its entirely own analytical path to get there.
Wow. And how did it do?
Well, what Anthropic found is that their frontier models can match and sometimes exceed human domain experts in reaching the correct conclusion.
That's incredible.
But the fascinating part is observing how the AI gets there. Because the benchmark is method agnostic, we are seeing the models employ analytical strategies that human researchers simply wouldn't use. Anthropic's researchers described it as observing alien science.
Wait, alien science. I need to visualize this. What does an alien analytical path actually look like in bioinformatics? If it's not doing what a human does, what is it doing?
Okay, so imagine a human researcher trying to understand how a specific protein folds. The human brain naturally looks for visual shapes, spatial relationships, or established biological narratives to make sense of the structure.
We look for patterns we can recognize.
Exactly. But the AI, well, it doesn't need a visual narrative. It might look at a massive data set of amino acids and find an obscure, purely mathematical correlation between two distant sequences.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's finding a statistical pattern that a human brain can't naturally visualize or even hold in its working memory. It bypasses the human approach entirely, follows the raw math, and arrives at the correct biological conclusion.
That is wild. It's reaching a scientifically sound conclusion, but taking a path through the data that our brains just aren't wired to take.
Right.
And if you think about it, that ability, the capability to navigate messy, real-world software tools to achieve a specific goal, that is the exact mechanism Anthropic is now bringing to the desktop.
We saw the commercial realization of this on April 28th, yeah. Anthropic launched what they are calling Claude for creative work.
This was a huge announcement.
It was. They introduced 9 new Model Context Protocol, or MCP connectors, which natively integrate Claude into professional creative software suites.
The list of supported software is huge, too. We're talking Adobe Creative Cloud, which is, over 50 apps on its own, plus Blender, Autodesk Fusion, Ableton, SketchUp.
It's massive.
But I have to admit, I'm a bit confused by the mechanics here. How does a text-based language model actually look at a 3D workspace in Blender? Like, it doesn't have eyes.
That is where the Model Context Protocol is critical. The AI isn't looking at your screen like a human does. MCP acts as a translator.
Okay.
It takes the visual 3D geometry of a Blender file or the layer structure of a Photoshop document, and it converts it into a highly structured text format like a JSON file.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so suddenly the AI can read the 3D space as a series of coordinates, textures, and properties.
So instead of just being like an intern in a chat window that you bounce ideas off of, Claude becomes the technical director.
Yeah.
You could theoretically open a massive project and say, apply this specific lighting texture to all 186 objects in this scene, and the AI understands the spatial data, writes the necessary Python script, and executes it directly inside Blender.
Exactly. It automates the tedious manual aspects of creative work. Batch processing images, writing complex 3D scripts, renaming hundreds of layers tasks that just drain a creator's energy.
Yeah, the boring stuff.
Right. And Anthropic is also working to ensure this workflow becomes second nature to the next generation of professionals. They announced partnerships with the Rhode Island School of Design, Ringling College of Art and Design, and Goldsmiths University.
Oh, wow. So they're putting it right in the classrooms.
Yes, to integrate these MCP connectors into their creative computation curricula.
So it's embedding the AI into the actual muscle memory of the creative industry from the ground up. But while they're rapidly expanding what the model can do on the desktop, they made a move on the back end that feels totally counterintuitive.
You're talking about the context window update?
Yeah. On April 30th, according to Anthropic's platform release notes, they officially retired the 1 million token context window beta for their Claude Sonnet 4.5 and 4 models. They've standardized those models back down to a 200,000 token limit.
Yeah, on paper, retreating on context size looks like a downgrade, especially when the entire industry seems to be in this, arms race for bigger memory windows.
Right.
But from an engineering standpoint, it is a necessary optimization. Loading 1 million tokens into a model's short-term memory is roughly equivalent to forcing it to read several thick novels all at once before it can answer a single question.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for anyone building software right now. Why does having more information make the model perform worse? Shouldn't more context always be better?
Well, it comes down to how the attention mechanism of a large language model functions. When you flood the model with a million tokens, its mathematical attention gets spread incredibly thin across all that data.
Oh, I see.
This introduces severe latency. The model takes much longer to respond, and it degrades accuracy. It creates the needle in a haystack problem.
Where it just loses track of things.
Exactly. It might easily recall the beginning or the end of the data dump, but completely hallucinate or skip over crucial facts buried right in the middle.
So by pulling the limit back to 200,000 tokens for the 4 and 4.5 generation, Anthropic is essentially telling developers they need to write better, more efficient software.
It forces the adoption of better architectures, specifically RG retrieval augmented generation.
Right.
Instead of uploading the entire library every single time you prompt the AI, a RAG system maintains an external database. When you ask a question, the system searches the index, pulls only the specific paragraphs relevant to your question, and feeds just that tiny slice of data to the AI.
It pulls the exact page it needs instead of reading the whole book.
Yes.
And I assume if an enterprise absolutely requires a massive 1 million token window for a single prompt, they aren't entirely out of luck, right?
No, not at all. They would just move that specific workload to Anthropic's newer 4.6 generation models.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, where the million token window is generally available and explicitly optimized for that scale. It's really a strategic move to consolidate massive, heavy compute workloads onto the infrastructure built to handle them, rather than bogging down the older, faster models.
And if we're talking about heavy compute workloads, you really cannot run agentic workflows inside Autodesk Fusion or, process a million tokens of context without some serious physical hardware.
That is very true.
Which brings up a major infrastructure announcement from April 27th. We saw a blog post from AWS detailing how Anthropic is physically powering this massive shift.
Yeah, Anthropic announced a deep silicon-level co-engineering relationship to train its most advanced foundation models directly on AWS Trainium and Graviton infrastructure.
Okay.
They are working in direct collaboration with Annapurna Labs, which is Amazon's custom silicon division.
Help me visualize the bottleneck here, though. If Anthropic needs more power, why not just rent more standard cloud servers? Why go all the way down to custom silicon?
Because when you operate AI at this scale, the bottleneck isn't always the mathematical calculation itself. It's the physical movement of data.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's the memory bandwidth. The actual time it takes for data to physically travel millimeters across a motherboard from the memory chip to the processor becomes a massive hurdle.
Wow.
Off-the-shelf cloud servers have generalized architectures. They just aren't optimized for the specific data travel paths of a massive neural network.
So the data is literally spending too much time in transit.
Exactly. By co-engineering directly with Annapurna Labs, Anthropic can optimize the physical layout of the silicon, the networking layer that connects the chips, and the software stack that runs on top of it.
They're building it from the ground up for AI.
Yes. They are minimizing that data travel time at the atomic level, which is required to achieve the low latency you need for an AI acting as a real-time technical director.
That level of hardware integration really highlights the stakes of what these models are doing now. With Claude now wielding the power to write Python code, execute scripts, and alter enterprise databases, the margin for error shrinks to absolute zero.
It does.
If the AI has its hands on the keyboard, security isn't just an add-on feature. It has to be the foundation of the entire system.
Which is why the development reported by Security magazine on April 30th is so critical. Anthropic moved Claude Security into public beta for its enterprise customers.
Powered by Opus 4.7, right?
Yes, powered by the Claude Opus 4.7 model. And this fundamentally shifts how the industry approaches software vulnerabilities.
So traditionally, if an enterprise wants to scan their code for bugs, they use automated security tools that act like spell checkers.
Right.
They scan the text of the code, looking for known malicious patterns or outdated libraries.
Legacy tools rely almost entirely on pattern matching, but Claude Security operates much more like a human security researcher. It actively scans code bases, but it goes deeper by tracing data flows and actually reasoning about how different software components interact. It seeks to understand the underlying business logic of the application.
Okay, give me a concrete example of that. What does a logic flaw look like compared to a standard virus pattern?
Think of a piece of enterprise software like a secure building. A traditional security scanner is like checking to make sure the front door has a strong lock and the security cameras are turned on. It checks the individual components.
Makes sense.
But a logic flaw happens in the interaction between components. Let's say the authentication module works perfectly and the database module works perfectly. But the specific way the authentication module passes a user token to the database allows a clever attacker to bypass the permission check entirely.
Both pieces of code are technically clean, so a traditional scanner just misses it, but the architecture itself is flawed.
Exactly. Claude Security can look at the whole building and recognize that architectural flaw. Once it finds those vulnerabilities, it proposes specific, targeted patches for a human engineer to review and approve.
That is wild.
It turns the AI into an active reasoning participant in the DevSecOps pipeline.
But giving an AI the ability to hunt through enterprise codebases and understand how to exploit zero-day vulnerabilities is an immense amount of power. I mean, if the model knows how to fix the internet, it theoretically possesses the knowledge of how to break it.
It's a dual-use capability, yes.
How is Anthropic governing a tool with that kind of capability?
Well, Anthropic addressed this internally on April 29th by updating their responsible scaling policy to version 3.2.
And that's their core safety framework, right?
Yes, it dictates how they develop and deploy models. The most significant change in version 3.2 grants the Long-Term Benefit Trust, which is an independent oversight body, the explicit authority to request external reviews of Anthropic's internal risk reports.
Okay, so taking the grading of the homework out of the hands of the student, so to speak.
Exactly. The trust can now officially approve the selection of external reviewers and require regular, formalized briefings. As models gain the capacity for autonomous coding and advanced security research, relying entirely on internal self-regulation just becomes untenable.
Yeah, you need outside eyes.
This update formalizes external audits to ensure the models aren't quietly developing dangerous capabilities.
You would assume that rigorous safety protocols and the ability to find zero-day vulnerabilities would make Anthropic incredibly popular with the government.
You would think so.
But that brings us to a really fascinating standoff we're seeing in the public sector right now. On May 1st, according to reports in Cyberscoop, the U.S. Pentagon announced a series of classified AI deployment deals. They brought in 7 or 8 major tech rivals, including OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, and AWS, to deploy AI on classified military networks. But Anthropic was noticeably excluded. They were kept on a supply chain risk list.
Right. And alongside that exclusion, Federal Chief Information Officer Greg Barbaccia made some pointed public statements regarding Anthropic's top-tier, currently unreleased model, Mythos.
What did he say?
Barbaccia essentially stated that while Mythos has shown incredible promise in finding decades-old vulnerabilities in controlled lab environments, the jury is still out on how the model will perform in live, actively defended government networks.
Okay, I am really trying to reconcile this. The DoD considers Anthropic a supply chain risk, reportedly because of Anthropic's own strict policies prohibiting their AI from being used for lethal autonomous weapons or domestic surveillance.
Right.
But simultaneously, the federal CIO is questioning whether the model, despite its amazing lab results, can actually handle the chaos of real-world military network.
Yeah, it's a complicated dynamic. We are essentially looking at the fundamental friction between rapid commercial AI deployment and rigorous federal procurement standards. The Department of Defense requires absolute operational flexibility. They need systems that are proven to be resilient on classified, chaotic networks without being constrained by commercial terms of service.
That makes sense from their side.
But on the other side, Anthropic maintains strict, self-defined ethical red lines regarding how its technology can be deployed, specifically regarding military applications.
So neither side appears willing to bend. The military needs tools that work in the mud without usage restrictions, and Anthropic is steadfastly sticking to its constitutional AI principles.
We are simply seeing the reality of two rigid frameworks colliding here. And the result is that, despite the Mythos model's capabilities in vulnerability research, Anthropic's federal revenue and its deployment footprint within the U.S. defense sector remain highly constrained.
It is a really complex web of friction.
Yeah.
But, while the U.S. federal sector might be bogged down in procurement standoffs, Anthropic is certainly not slowing down its global enterprise rollout.
No, definitely not.
Just a few days prior, on April 27th, they made a major operational move in the APAC region.
Yes, they officially opened a new office in Sydney, Australia, and appointed Theo Aramuzis as the General Manager for Australia and New Zealand.
Theo Orbuzis, right.
He is a former Snowflake executive with deep experience in scaling enterprise technology in that specific region.
Out of all the places to expand globally right now, why plant a flag in Sydney?
Well, Anthropic noted that Australia already has some of the highest per capita Claude usage in the world.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and strategically, building regional hubs is essential for navigating local regulatory environments. Data sovereignty is becoming a massive issue for enterprises right now.
Yeah, companies want to know where their data actually lives.
Exactly. They want guarantees about where it's being processed and stored. By having a physical presence and local leadership in Sydney, Anthropic can deepen its ties with regional enterprises and government bodies, tailoring their rollout to the specific privacy laws of the APAC market.
Because it takes boots on the ground to build enterprise trust. You just can't do it all from San Francisco.
You really can't.
Well, if we step back and look at the ground we've covered today, it is breathtaking how much has shifted in just a single week. We've seen Anthropic grapple with the psychological weight of users relying on Claude for serious life advice. We've seen them prove their models can conduct alien science in bioinformatics entirely outside the bounds of human reasoning. They are fundamentally changing the workflow for 3D artists and designers by letting the AI manipulate the software tools directly.
It's a totally new paradigm.
It really is. They've re-engineered their cloud infrastructure with AWS. They've launched autonomous security agents that understand the business logic of enterprise code, and they're navigating a highly complex, principled standoff with the Pentagon.
It perfectly illustrates the transition we discussed at the start of the show. AI is no longer a separate, isolated oracle that you consult in a browser tab. It is actively becoming the connective tissue of our digital infrastructure.
Yeah.
But as we watch this happen, it raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider.
Let's hear it.
As AI systems like Claude move from being assistants we talk to into technical directors that autonomously operate our creative tools and hunt for vulnerabilities in our source code, where does the human's job end and the AI's job begin? When the AI is the one holding the mouse, understanding the 3D space, and executing the code, who is actually the creator?
That is a brilliant question to leave you with as we watch that boundary between user and tool continue to blur.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the evolving world of Anthropic. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will catch you on the next one.